This footage has been sent in by one of you guys on Twitter, wanting me to give my reaction to this YouTube video that has been going semi-viral. It's called Crazy Footage of a Plane Missing the Runway on Landing by a Lot. So let's have a look at it, shall we? So video quality. Weather doesn't look great, it looks quite marginal. See the ground and the lights though, so that's a good thing. Ooh, that's quite a bit of maneuvering here at low altitude. Okay guys, so full disclosure, I do not know what the background is to this clip. I don't know what the weather was like because it was shot back in March of 2017. What I do know is that it is an Aeromexico Connect flight with an Embraer 145 flying into Monterrey airport in Mexico. So Monterrey airport has two runways, right? They have the main runway 29 and 11, and then they have a small cross runway that doesn't have any instrument approaches to it. Now, given from what we can see in this clip, where you can see the hangars on the right-hand side of the runway, I'm going to say that they're flying into runway 11, right? Now, runway 11 in Monterrey, it doesn't have any ILS approach, any instrument landing system. So they only have a VOR approach, which is a non-precision approach based on a fixed radio nav aid that's sitting towards the west of the main runway. And now they also have something called an RNAV approach, but I'm not sure that that was actually there back in 2017, because from what I can see, it looks like they had to do quite a bit of maneuvering towards the end. And the VOR is slightly offset, which means that the final approach track that they're flying is not aligned exactly with the runway center line. And that is because, like I said before, because the nav aid, the VOR, is actually a little bit to the west of the main runway. So it's not aligned perfectly, and when you have that, it means that towards the very end of the approach, you are going to need to do a little bit of maneuvering in order to align yourself with the center line. That's perfectly normal, right? And it's not much. I think it's only a few degrees offset. However, what we can also see is that it looks like they're having a little bit of crosswind from the right, because they are having the nose kind of into the wind a little bit, what we call flying with a crab angle. So when they're coming down the approach here, first of all, when I look at the configuration of the aircraft, it looks like they're nicely configured. You can hear the engine thrust, it's now nicely stabilized. So all of it looks like a perfectly stabilized approach. Now, what I mean with the stabilized approach is that they're ready to land, right? They've done their checklists. We don't know that, obviously, but they have their flaps out, they have their thrust up, they're on speed and on the correct altitude and their correct track. And they only need, some small adjustments towards the end. That's perfectly okay to do even during stabilized criteria. With weather as poor as this, now I don't know Aeromexico Connect's SOPs, but you need to be stabilized probably around 1,000 feet with poor weather. So that it's perfectly possible that they were fully stabilized here to start with. Now, as they go down the approach, when they come down to a fairly low altitude, the minima on a non-precision approach is about 500 feet above ground. That's where you need to decide if you see enough to be able to land safely or not. If the answer is no, you go around. If the answer is yes, you can then disconnect and continue to fly manually. So that looks like exactly what they did here. What you immediately see, though, is that they do quite a lot of maneuvering. This is not just a few degrees, which is what you would expect, but a lot more, right? They're banking for quite a long while here. And eventually you see, and this is taken by a passenger, you see through the passenger window the runway, and that's never a good thing, okay? Unless there are some really extreme crosswinds, you shouldn't be able to see the runway from a passenger window. It just means that the nose is pointing the wrong way. So what is likely to have happened here is that as they disconnected, they did something which is quite common, especially for inexperienced first officers, is that if you're sitting with the crab angle into the wind in order to keep the track going down, then you see the runway and disconnect, you point the nose towards the runway. And when you do so, of course, the wind is still there, so it's going to blow you off the center line. And in this case, it looks like he's even overcorrecting a little bit. So it's going over towards the other side of the runway, overshooting the center line. Now this happens at around second 44 or something here. And from that point on, it's fairly obvious that they're no longer stabilized. Okay, there's no way that they can do only some minor changes to their track and their thrust in order to maintain a stabilized landing from this point. And you can hear that from them adding quite a lot of thrust, and they're starting to maneuver. Now, if there's one thing that I want you to take away from this clip, guys, is that if you find yourself in a position where you have that bad feeling in the stomach, that doesn't feel good, just go around, all right? Don't hesitate, just go around. Because what we can see here is that from about second 53, you hear the thrust coming off, okay? And the aircraft is doing quite a lot of maneuvering at a very low altitude. And that's indicative of them trying to fix it, right? Trying to get back over the runway and potentially touch down. But they've already gone outside of the stabilized criteria. They've already had to add a lot of thrust. They're no longer pointed towards the touchdown zone, which is where you want to touch down for your landing calculations to be correct. And if you do this, there's a lot of things that's going to happen in a very short time span that you're not used to, okay? And the likelihood of taking some really poor decisions is very high. So at time 59 seconds, you can hear them add thrust again and go around. And that was the right thing to do, okay? Even though I don't know all of the background around this, what I do know is that doing a go-around from that point was the right thing to do. And I bet that the guys up in the front, once they had executed the initial go-around maneuver, were really happy that they did that. Because most airlines nowadays have something called a no-blame policy for go-arounds. This means that if a pilot feels something is wrong, hears something is wrong, sees something is wrong, or just have a bad feeling, you can always elect to go around, okay? Shoot another approach, come in and land normally, no questions asked, all right? The airline is never going to be questioning your decision to go around. You might have to file a report, especially if it happens at low altitude, because it's needed for statistical reasons, but the go-around in itself is always a good idea, and we should always fly every approach to a potential go-around. Landing, though, especially if something has happened, like what we see here, is very rarely a good idea. Okay, and I'm saying that because even if these guys would have landed from this and, you know, gotten the aircraft to stop and taxied off, some passenger have obviously shot this video and elected to upload it on YouTube, and it's going to go viral, and then the airline is going to be tagged in this, and the airline is going to be questioned about it, and they are going to then question the pilots about their decision to land off this obviously unstabilized approach. So the lesson to take away from this, guys, is that if you end up in a situation like this, which we all can do, right? We're all human, we all make mistakes, then just go around, right? No one is going to question that. You will feel much better after. If you are the pilot monitoring, call for a go around. Make that decision easy for the pilot flying, because the pilot flying can end up in something we call get-there-itis. Okay, so focused on continuing to fly the aircraft and getting it down on the ground that they don't realize that the right decision to make is a go-around. And if that happens, that's why you're there as a pilot monitoring, to make that call, to call for that go-around, get the aircraft up in the air again, do another approach, come down and do a perfectly nice landing after that. And no one is going to question it. So that's it, guys. I love when you send in these things for me. I might not always do a reaction video to them, but if I think there is a learning point to be made, then I will do it. So continue contacting me on Instagram, here on YouTube, write whatever you want here in the comments below, or Twitter, or in the Mentour Aviation app, or join my Discord server. Okay, we have more than 3,000 people that are in there talking about flight instruction and talking about flight simulators and loads of discussions going on. So come in, contact, ask your questions, have an absolutely fantastic day wherever you are, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.